Okay, folks, we are back again. I'm going to try and get more serious by watching a lot of movies and making a lot of recommendations and reviews. I was at the thrift shop up in Stockton a week ago and I stumbled upon a VHS, and it was a Frank Capra movie that I had never heard of. And apparently it's not considered one of his more notable films. But I thought to myself, I could pay 50 cents for this and watch a horrible VHS copy, or I will find a digital DVD copy. And they had it at my local library to rent. So I did that, and I was also disappointed in the quality, and we'll get to that later on in the review. You'll understand why. 1941, this movie came out before the U.S. entered World War II. It came out in March of 1941. $1.8 million box office totals. Meet John Doe, directed by Frank Capra, 2-hour and 2-minute runtime. And this movie is as relevant today as it was when it came out. And I can understand why this movie doesn't get as much notoriety as some of his other films, because of it kind of feels like It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which I feel like you can rank it up there as a similar quality film. I think this movie is top notch. But you could tell just by the DVD quality box literature here. This is a low budget production. This movie fell out of copyright in 1969 and entered the public domain. And the original film print of this was lost and deterioration from improper storage. So what you get is the best prints that Warner Brothers had pieced together. Apparently, from information that I read online, the Library of Congress did restore the original film prints, but it has never been released on a digital format, which is a shame, because this is not a very good copy. It's very muddy. It is a black and white film. Obviously, it's from the golden age of Hollywood. Not a good quality copy. Lots of horrible splice jobs. You could tell they were picking lots of the best copies that were out there on 35 millimeter and cutting it together to put it out there to the public. At least we have it, right? This movie, I would say, is a rare 5 out of 5. At first, I was leaning towards 4 out of 5, but then as the movie just went on, I found myself weeping alone in my room watching this picture. And this is kind of loosely based off of a 1922 story from this magazine called Century Magazine. An American journalist / author, Richard Connell Jr., he wrote this story that this was based off of. And then the story for the screen was written by a guy, Robert Presnell Sr., and the screenplay, Robert Riskin. And that dates back to the late 30s. And, well, actually 1939, I think. So this movie came out, 3 years later? Anyway, Frank Capra had always envisioned Gary Cooper playing the main guy, the John Doe character. If you're not familiar with this film, basically Barbara Stanwyck gets laid off from a newspaper that gets sold, and a lot of the staff writers and the old timers get laid off, and she's in the mix of columnists that didn't make the cut for the new ownership. So they told her to publish her final column, and she made some kind of like, I'm sick of the world, I'm going to jump off the city hall on Christmas Eve, as like a big middle finger to the paper that had just laid her off. And they ran it in the print, and it created a lot of interest from political people and just average Joes in general. Because if she signed it, John Doe, and then the paper saw how much interest that fake story was creating, people thought it was a real guy. People thought maybe it's not a real guy. It was kind of this big talking point throughout the nation that the newspaper capitalized on it. And this movie, to me, is about media manipulation and people in power wanting to manipulate the masses to get into power and stay in power and do what they want to do. Very relevant film. I'm sad there's not a Criterion release of this, and there's not a better copy out there, because of it has all the classic features of what you would expect of a Capra film, pulling at the heartstrings. He does these close shots. He's really good at picking characters. You can see Gary Cooper playing this man that they chose as a pawn to fill the role of this artificial person that the media created. And then that was just the face guy. And as things get deeper, he starts to unravel because he's just exposed to the darkness of people in power, which you're seeing now more than ever. And there's a big dichotomy between the John Doe, average Joe American, that's a good person, love your neighbor as yourself type of people, and these people, these elites that want to be in power. And he was just a pawn in their game. And it sends a very powerful message at the very end of it, which I got very emotional about. So, I was a rare 5 out of 5. Rotten Tomato critic score was 92%. As I find for a lot of the black and white golden age of Hollywood movies, the audience score was only 82%. I find that a lot of these movies don't measure up with what I can assume is a modern viewing audience. Apparently, a lot of people see this in film classes, according to things that I've read online. IMDb 7.6 out of 10. It's a great film, and it should be watched because the message is very relevant. Criterion Collection, I'd like to see a restored copy with very crisp details because, oh yeah, Barbara Stanwyck, she reminds me of the Gilmore Girls. She's just like this fast-talking newspaper woman, and again, the Gary Cooper character plays kind of this gaunt, worn-down vagabond that's just exploited as the face for the masses of this whole article series that the newspaper was running. And they realize there's a lot of power behind it, and then people try to seek political gain from it, and it's just kind of sad. It kind of reminds me of the exploited character of James Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So I can see why a lot of people, AFI has it on their number 49 of their top 100 feel-good films. I could see why a lot of people don't talk about this film because of it feels like a lot of other Frank Capra films, like I mentioned. I feel like you can watch this, It's a Wonderful Life, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Another pairing of Capra's frequent soundtrack collaborator, Dmitri Timkin. And then I believe Robert Riskin was also a frequent collaborator. This was his second film with Warner Brothers since he left Columbia. That's all that I really want to say. It's just a beautiful film. I'm sure that I might have watched this movie in my younger years with my mom on Turner Classic Movies. I couldn't remember it in detail, and I told my mom about it recently, and she said she had seen it. So I just feel so sad that this movie doesn't get the print quality of a modern restored version that it deserves. So until next time, add it to the list of rare Corey 5 out of 5s, and I wished I was more thorough with my notes so I can give you a rundown of all the movies that have gotten a rare 5 out of 5. But they're elusive. They're like a unicorn. I can't just be dishing out 5 out of 5s. Until next time, we'll see you then.